Welcome to Paramaribo, Suriname, where we are hosting the 2019 HFLD Conference on Climate Finance. Our next guest here today with us is Dr. Tom Evans from the Wildlife Conservation Society. Welcome, Dr. Evans.
Minister Tsang, thank you very much for inviting me.
You are most welcome. We are very excited to have you here. We, at least most of us have heard your presentation this morning, and we apologize for the technical difficulties you experienced. And it was for us very interesting to hear about some of the things you mentioned. And one of the things you mentioned that stuck to me was that you said that forest degradation had a higher effect on the climate change and even deforestation. Could you elaborate on that a bit?
Yes, I think that's true for some of the low deforestation countries and low deforestation areas which are the subject of this conference. Forest degradation takes many forms: logging, creation of new edges and building of roads, and the destruction of wildlife can all affect the carbon storage of a forest, and those pressures often go ahead of deforestation. The deforestation comes later, but the frontier of forest disturbance moves ahead of the forest clearance frontier, and so remote areas get degraded often before they get deforested, and so it's an important thing to try to measure and capture.
As the time frame of the degradation is longer than the deforestation itself. So.
Exactly, and it reaches further into the forest.
But one of the things that is a bit contradictory to me is that when you promote RED+ in the programs, RED+ has a part where you can do sustainable logging, but sustainable logging, as Mr. Mittermeier also said, is every form of logging, even if it's sustainable, it's degrading the forest. So how is that, how can you justify that in the RED+ program?
Well, that's a very interesting question, and it's been the subject of a lot of debate. The principle is that yes, logging, all forms of logging, reduce the carbon storage of the forests, and the way that it's been adopted into the RED+ process is that if you have logging going on which is reducing the carbon storage by a great deal, and you improve logging practices so that the losses are less, then you've gained something.
Yes.
You've made the world better than it otherwise was. You've still lost something compared to not logging at all, but you've gained something compared to bad logging practices, what are often called conventional logging practices. And so there's some movement upwards there, but yes, still ultimately logging of primary intact tropical forests results in decline in carbon stocks, and that is a problem for the global planet.
Even for us HFLD countries, we are developing countries. So for us to find a balance between development of the country or preserving the forest, it's getting much more of a problem every time. And we are hoping with this HFLD conference that we can find more sustainable solutions for climate finance. And having said that, what are your hopes coming out of this conference?
Well, that's an interesting question. I think this is going to be a fairly long road. The topic's been discussed for a number of years already without a complete solution being found, so we're not going to find it in 3 days. But I very much hope that this is the start of a renewed process where a group of countries get together and say, this is an important issue, it's not been solved yet, we'd like to go forward together and trying to identify solutions, and some new and creative thinking about how we can get around some of the previous challenges that have stopped us solving it in the past.
Very good. So you agree that this will be the first of many conferences like this?
I think that's what's needed, is a process, and for these countries to collectively develop some thinking and take it into the platform of the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change.
Yes, exactly.
And speak on the international stage about it.
We have to work together. Thank you so much, Dr. Evans.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you for having me.